Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mind Your Mission, a podcast where we encourage Christian women to stay on track towards what God says is good in His Word. Today, we are really excited to have one of our friends, Kendal, joining us on the podcast. Kendal was a year behind Liz and I at the Academy, and she has a really cool story that she is willing to share with you guys today about how God has changed her heart through motherhood. And so I, for one, am really excited to hear Kendal tell this story, but I'm also just excited for the benefit that you'll get out of it as well. So, Kendal, we'll turn it over to you. If you could start by just sharing a bit about why you joined the Coast Guard in the first place, and then what happened? What happened after that, and how has your view of motherhood changed since you got pregnant, surprisingly?
Yeah. Well, hi, Erin, and hi, Liz. Thanks so much for having me on this very special podcast. But in all seriousness, I love getting to talk to you guys. So yeah, just like my background was really like God's hand definitely was the thing that led me to the Coast Guard and specifically to the Academy, which is a very cop-out thing to say, but it's very true. And that's a little bit of a longer story, but I know that he's the one who put me at the Academy out of high school. And it was very interesting because going into it, right, I felt like I was told the same thing that like a lot of girls are told nowadays in the sense of like, the world is your oyster, right? Everything you have all the same opportunities, which is true, and I still think that's a good thing. But there was not really like much conversation from people around me or adults around me even about the topic of like family and motherhood and how that like could incorporate into your young adult life or how that could consume your young adult life depending on like what you want. And it was never really posed as like an option. So I feel like I just automatically, like, without hesitation, just went for the, single adult mindset, right? Like, how do you get into college? And then what do you do after? How do you make money and survive on your own until, someday family ends up just kind of falling into your lap, essentially. So that was definitely I think it could be summed up in that, like, my view of motherhood and like my thoughts towards it were like very few,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
I knew like being a mom was a noble calling, and it's regardless of whether you're stay at home or not, like it's a lot of work. It's an incredible amount of self-sacrifice, and it's taxing and it's tiring. Um, and truthfully, I never really even wanted to be pregnant, like before getting pregnant, because I've always had a heart for adoption, and I do still, but everybody who I heard talk about it, right? It's just like, oh, pregnancy is terrible. You feel super heavy. Your bones hurt. Like you're uneven in every kind of way. And then like that's not even talking about labor. And it just seemed like, oh, it's this terrible thing, but it's magical and wonderful. But like your body's in shambles. So yeah, that was definitely like my whole perception of it before ever getting into it.
What's your perception of it now after?
It's funny because I do still joke that like I feel like my body's in shambles, which is like not my body is crazy how like different I feel just on like only when it's not something that I notice like consciously, but like if I stop to think about it, I'm like, wow, like it's crazy how I just feel like I'm in a different body almost. Like I feel like I'm in somebody else's bones and skin. um but in like a good way. And I think, and like you and Aaron have talked about it before too, of just how much our bodies are capable of doing. And it seemed before that it was like, okay, crazy and it's a burden and that's hard and it's taxing and it's difficult, but it's such an amazing thing that our bodies are able to do so much, both within pregnancy and postpartum and recovery and breastfeeding and all that. So I feel like now it's crazy. I never really thought when you're in the moment, it just didn't feel like I was ever going to be back to like feeling like I was in my own body, but it felt like it was never going to happen, but like it has happened now. I feel
Mhm.
definitely just like fully recovered back to myself, which has been, nearly 6 months, but
That's good to hear because I feel like a lot of that mindset comes after you have the baby, and during it you're just like, wow, this is like really new and different. But everyone says it's worth it, and I know it is, and I don't want to complain about it because I want to be thankful for it because so many people don't get this opportunity. So I don't know, but yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm
Second
not
time
through it yet.
around, second time around, I feel like you expect it more, and you're a little bit more prepared.
right.
It still is rough, but I feel like you have a better idea of of how it takes a toll on your body.
Right. Like it's
Um,
not new, like
no,
anywhere.
no, and your body knows what to do better. Like my body's adjusted better this time around, I think.
Yeah.
So take us back, Kendall, just a little bit so that people can get a full picture. Talk In order to talk about finding out you were pregnant, I feel like we actually have to go back to like a little bit of your and Connor's love story because it takes two to tango. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us like a brief overview of like you and Connor when you started dating, when you got married, and then just the timeline aspect of everything.
Yeah, so our story, and we love it, is that we met at the academy, and the joke that we always tell is, so he's an identical twin, I'm an identical twin, right? And so it's like one of those little fun facts that you pass around of like, oh, how many siblings do you have? Where are you from? All that. And as soon as like we were both twins came up, it was like eyes on target, locked in, like I have a crush on the girl. And we just joked that from then on, he just wore me down and he was like, okay, you want to friend zone me? Well, we're going to become best friends now. And then we became best friends. And then we started dating. And that was all in our freshman year at the academy. And then we dated like the remainder of the 3 years. Um, got engaged in our senior year and then got married the day after the graduation, just like y'all did, in just the same fashion of Coast Guard Academy Chapel wedding with like a reception right nearby on grounds that were very special to us. So, yeah, both having graduated, dual military now, and yeah, counting the months
Mhm.
until we're not dual military anymore.
What were the conversations like leading up into marriage about like your careers and like what you guys wanted from the Coast Guard? Because I'm sure it's so different to what it is now. Like you said, you're counting down the days to get out. But I wonder, how was it in that season as you guys were planning for marriage? Because I feel like that's something that comes up when you're.
And
Oh,
family, because I remember vividly a conversation that I had with you in Laney. We were like getting Starbucks and like you told me you didn't want kids, and I was like, wow, like, 'cause at that point,
I
I didn't think I wanted kids, like, as early as I had them
Mhm.
either at that point, but I was like, wow, like, I'm surprised, like, strong Christian couple, I don't know, the stereotype is, like, you want 10 kids. I don't know.
right, right.
And I was like I think you talked specifically, like, "Yeah, I just being pregnant just doesn't sound pleasing to me," and
Yep.
the fear of it, like, so, yeah, walk us through what changed from then to whenever you found out you were pregnant.
Yeah, then to now. Well, definitely that was 100% true. And like, yeah, the conversations that we even had were still. I remember when we first started dating, I was very upfront with him. It was like I was sweating because we were virtual and it was COVID. So I was like FaceTiming him and I was like beat red in the face because I wasn't going to mess around. Connor was the first guy that I dated and we ended up married. And so we see how that turned out. But I was very like, we're going to get all of the absolute non-negotiables out the way in the first like 8 weeks, basically. And definitely kids, I was sweating bringing up the topic because I just was like, I know that this guy probably wants a big family. Like he's one of 4 siblings and, I could just see that happening. And then I brought it up and I was like, I don't think that I don't know if I want kids. I don't know if God's put that on my heart. I think biological kids are not my forte, but I would be happy with adoption. But also, I don't know where the Lord's leading me on that because, frankly, just like a year before I met him, I just completely surrendered my love life to God and said, like, if you want me to be a spinster, an old single lady for my whole life, I said, that's cool, God, whatever you want to do. So I was already shocked that I was in a relationship. And then, yeah, same with kids was throughout our conversations and constantly rechecking of like, are we so good? You're not tied to me. We're not married until we're married. Like, I don't know if I'm going to change my mind. It doesn't mean that I won't. My mind's open to it, but I just don't know. And then up to when we found out, when we got married, we were like, okay, I was like, I could see us having a family. I'm a lot more open to it, but still like the condition on our mind, like the condition that we made right with God was like, okay, just until after I get out of the Coast Guard because I already knew that me and the Coast Guard were just not suited for each other. It's a great career.
Mhm.
Doesn't jive with me. I don't jive with it. And we're about to, we're going to handshake and part ways one day. But
Did you feel that way at the academy, or is that since graduating?
that was definitely like at the academy. I think my
Okay.
senior year, I started to realize that like you have to have a certain personality to just be like able to say like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and not talk back too much, and it's just not the place for me, because I talk back too much. So, I think knowing that definitely made it a lot easier to, like, reconcile with, like, okay, I don't want this as my career, so I'm okay with, like, once this is up, with not having a career yet. Like, that's kind of where my mindset was, but still not really anticipating. I was like, okay, once I get out, I just don't. We don't want to have to deal with the whole complexity of, you
Yeah.
know, dual careers and having a family, and so
I
then,
said the same thing.
right. So then fast forward, finding out that we were pregnant was quite a shock. We were at Turner and Leo's wedding, and just a couple weeks prior, I had done the natural cycle tracking method and gotten a notification off my phone that's, of course, in post, of like, hey, just by the way, like, you ovulated early. Just a by the way. And it's like, we're past that point now. Just
Yeah.
thanks for that.
Nothing you can do.
Right. Like, we're past that. But it was like, actually, your green days were red days. So it's like, um, and we kind of, yeah, brushed it off, laughed it off in a wouldn't that be crazy kind of way.
Yeah.
And just,
Not thinking, like, you didn't think anything of it. You just thought.
we were like, how? That's so unlikely, right? That would be crazy. And then, yeah, and then we were at Turner and Leo's wedding, and it was like like my period had only been 1 day late at that point,
Mhm.
and that even the 1 day late, like, since that seed was planted, it was just, I can't think about anything else for this
Yeah.
entire day, entire evening. Like, I need to know, if not to at least just like know, rather than
Yeah.
like fester on it the entire evening. So I ran out to CVS and ducked out and came back and took the test in the wedding venue bathroom. And at our friend's wedding, we found out that we were pregnant. And yeah, I would definitely say the first couple months, just being brutally honest, it was really devastating and shocking, because we had held, like, those plans of, like, what our next 5 years were going to be like. You know, the expectation of being able to, in quote, you know, enjoy marriage without the added responsibility of taking care of other little humans, and without the extra inconveniences that does naturally bring. And so we were, like, looking forward to just being dinkwads, you know, dual income, no kids with a dog. Um, and yeah, so that really shattered our vision, and we were pretty sad about it.
Was
So,
Connor also pretty sad?
he was not quite as sad as I was, I don't think, but we still definitely, like, were in it together, in the grieving of, like, this feeling, you know, this, not to be melodramatic, because it totally sounds super dramatic, but this feeling like we were losing our 20s to, like,
Yeah.
losing the freedom that we thought we would enjoy, at that stage in our life. So it was definitely more me, but still both of us had, like, our kind of ugly cries together of, like, things are different. Like, we know that we said, oh, it's all in the Lord's timing, but now that, like, we're being
It's
told
the Lord's timing.
now that we're being told to pony up and trust that the Lord has better timing than us, it was really hard.
When do you think your heart changed, like, throughout pregnancy? Because I feel like by the time you had your baby, you were excited and, like,
Oh,
so
yeah.
excited to be a mom. So, like, when did that change? And I guess, how did that change?
I think I have to say, and I think that really, it's part of, like, what my advice to anybody would be who, like, was in that place that I was in, but it really just came down to suddenly seeing. It was very obvious to me how God's timing was truly better than our timing was, and just opening my eyes and being willing to be open and see the possibilities of how he was fitting kids into our life earlier than I expected, in such a better way than I could have planned for. Like, suddenly all of my friends were pregnant. Like, suddenly
Yeah.
I am in this stage of life that so many people that I know are enjoying and getting to walk through right now. And that really started to become a beautiful thing, that I was able to enjoy, like, the folks in, like, you two, and the folks that are in, like, our military mamas group chat, and just all of my friends locally. Like, it was either slightly before I got pregnant or slightly after, where um it just came down to, like, making friends that were moms, or we're pregnant or whatever, and like walking it out with like by walking out motherhood in a God honoring way.
Mhm.
And that made me a lot more excited. And also just coupled with the fact of like knowing that I didn't want to be in the Coast Guard for longer than I have to. But yeah, it was definitely like seeing people like enjoying motherhood and not just having all of like the negativity of like our modern secular culture of like kids are a drag and they'll ruin your life.
Mm-hmm.
I see so many parallels between like how I was feeling and how you were also feeling. Like it's crazy. But I guess we have similar like college experience and stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense. But yeah, I didn't want to have kids either. I remember in high school I would always say like, "Oh, I'm never having kids." But then in college I was like, I mean, I'll have kids. I didn't want to have them, but I knew like I would be a mom one day, but it wasn't
You
like a
gotta get
desire
there.
of mine. Yeah, it was not like a desire of mine, but I was like, yeah, I'll do it, like whatever. And I feel like I kind of wanted I wanted a career in the Coast Guard up until I started a career in the Coast Guard. It's like actually this isn't for me, but I feel like God changed my heart before I got pregnant. Because natural cycles did work for me. Didn't work for these two, but it did work for me.
Oopsie. We're the poster children.
I know. I'm like, it worked great for me, but yeah, I feel like the Lord. It was probably was it maybe a year after I got married. I feel like that whole year I was terrified of having kids and terrified of being pregnant. And then, like the summer I moved to Virginia, I feel like the Lord really changed my heart. And I
I
think
was
part
gonna
of
say,
it,
I feel like it was like right after we started podcasting, honestly.
yeah, it was. When did I move? A year ago, I moved
Mhm.
here, and I was like, oh, I actually really do want to have kids. I think because I saw, like you said, like my friends going through it. Like you were pregnant, Erin was pregnant, and I just everyone around me was getting pregnant. So I was like, well, I don't want to miss out on this. Then I got really excited, but I had to like wait because Matt was gone for like 3 months for school, and then I had hip surgery. So it was like a little bit of a waiting game. Not really, but I'm thankful that it did happen when it did. So it's like I don't want to take pregnancy for granted because I really wanted to be pregnant. But it's just cool how the Lord changes our hearts in different ways and prepares us for like what He's called us to. Because yeah, it truly is only the Lord. Because I was same as you. I did not really want to be pregnant or have kids, but
And
the Lord.
I didn't know that you had like made that realization that you wanted to get out of the Coast Guard before having Caroline. Like I feel like it was almost God's grace just like walking you to that in a great way. Like I mean, and I explain and it's just crazy too how everybody's story is so unique to them. Like there were things on the boat when I found out I got pregnant, like just little things like conversations I'd have that like, oh, maybe that is a desire. Like, oh, like it just slowly began to creep in a conversation. So it's just cool how how God slowly works us there in His timing and in His way, and it's so specific to each of us. One thing that you mentioned too, you said the word inconvenience when it came to how you and Connor kind of viewed the initial news of getting pregnant. And the thing is, and I can tell you this like specifically now that I'm in like the toddler stage because my baby doesn't just lay there anymore. Recently, it has been really, really hard being pregnant. It is exhausting and it is that word. It is an inconvenience. But that's not a bad thing. And so I think like people we're not trying to convince people that it's not an inconvenience. It's the fact that laying down your life is what creates the best heart change that I've like come to find is the most important message of it all. And it was interesting last week. Weston was with Nolan's parents for a few nights, and so we had like a few days just to have like a normal week. Like we were still working and everything, but we came home and Weston wasn't here. And it was great and all, but, like, I didn't get anything done that I thought I would, like, it wasn't a luxury, it felt very like, I just scrolled on Instagram, like, it felt lazy, and I didn't feel like I got anything done, and it's just crazy how in the 2 hours after Weston goes to bed, it's, like, go time, and I'm so productive, and I feel so great about myself when I go to bed, and I feel like I've worked a full day, like, the inconvenience of childbearing and child raising it makes me feel fulfilled because I'm actually embracing the purpose that God's given
Mhm.
me and my body and us as women specifically. And so, I don't know, I just more and more realize that, like, it's a lot of work and it's exhausting, and that's, like, not to be taken lightly, but it's also the best thing ever because that actually changes us. The hard stuff actually changes us.
Yeah.
No, what you're saying I resonate with so much because I feel like whenever I figured out I wanted to be pregnant, I was like so tired of just coming home and having like nothing to do. Like I was just like, I'm just like a lazy bum. Like, what is my purpose in life? So I'm excited to, even though it'll be exhausting, have like a more of a purpose and more structure, if that makes sense. Because especially when Matt's gone, I'm like, I am basically worthless at that point.
No. But so have either of you, on this topic, have either of you listened to the M is for Mama podcast?
Mm-mm.
I
I've never
listened
heard
to
of it.
one episode that she did on another podcast that I listen to
Okay.
routinely, but
I recently started listening to her per the recommendation of another friend, but she is really amazing. She has 10 kids, and she the thing that she says a lot in like the first few episodes that I've listened to is that hard is not necessarily bad. And like we know that in, a logical, rational sense, but it's very hard, I think, for a lot of people to separate that and like actually acknowledge that as a truth. And so like in motherhood, like and pregnancy and labor, I think that was also part of what God used to change my mindset is like, okay, pregnancy is hard. Like, how can I go through this well and like in a God honoring way? And labor is hard. Like, how am I going to get through that? In like not just a survival setting, but like, do it. How am I going to do that well? And that was really when I got actually excited and saw it as a challenge and like getting into this group and getting into podcasts and reading up and researching on like evidence-based birth and all that sort of stuff, but like actually understanding like how it doesn't have to be this miserable like TV weird screaming and dramatic like time. I think is one of those things that also like definitely God used to change my heart is like knowledge is power, and having the knowledge and the understanding of like God's design for us and how we can in a way use that to our advantage, was definitely a huge thing that changed my outlook on pregnancy and outlook on labor and then postpartum a lot too. So yeah, the difficult does not mean, or hard does not mean bad. Difficult does not mean bad. Is a huge thing that I've come to really take to heart.
yeah, last week on the podcast we talked about breastfeeding, just
Mhm.
the basics of it for Liz's sake, but then also just like the spiritual application. And one thing that we brought up is the whole point of our podcast. Like Mind Your Mission is all about this theme right here, but it's that the more we know about God's design, the more we can live in a way that allows us to flourish. Like you're saying, the example of labor and delivery, it's such a perfect example. The more you know about it, the more you understand the science and the design, the more that you're able to step into it and embrace the way that it's designed, and it'll allow you to flourish in that setting that's supposed to be super hard and painful and not an enjoyable experience. And
Mhm.
same with breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is super hard, but the more you understand, the more you're able to to wrestle with the hard things. And the hard things we talked about too last week, that the wrestle is sometimes what God cares about way more than like if you're able to do it successfully or not. Like right now, I Kendall, I think I'm 90% decided that I'm doing a home birth.
Oh my
I
goodness.
didn't know 90%. That's
Yeah, the percentage has
okay.
gone up and up, but the more that I wrestle with that, I was on the treadmill today and I had this really deep moment with God. I was just sitting there listening to a Forrest Frank song, and he was basically like, "Girl, it doesn't matter. Like
Mhm.
either way, I got you." Is like
Mhm.
what I was feeling, and it just made me realize a lesson that I've had to learn over and over and over in life. But like when you're faced with two like a decision that you're thinking is going to be life or death, like the biggest decision of your life. Like, what am I going to do after graduation? Am I going to marry this guy? Like, are we going to have kids? All these huge decisions. Like, yes, God cares about our feelings and wants us to like know that he loves us. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not about what we choose. He's not going to we got two good looking desserts in front of us. And it's not like if we pick the wrong one, he's going to throw it in our face. Like, both are great. Pick one and go at it wholeheartedly and trust the Lord to guide your steps. Like it's all about glorifying him and getting to know him more. So yeah, we were talking about that last week, and so I just thought it'd be good to tie in. So
I remember when you and I started getting close, like I think your third class year, my fourth, or
mhm,
like the year after that. And
yeah.
like you gave me that exact analogy. And I've always thought like it's such a simple one, but like I've always thought about that of like it's not to say that we aren't supposed to use discernment and we aren't supposed to seek godly wisdom and seek God in prayer and in his word and, make smart choices. But at the same time, like when there are two doors open and God's saying, like, choose, sometimes it really is not about like a good or a bad decision or a right or wrong decision. It's just like about taking the next step, and then God's gonna get you wherever he wants you to go as long as you keep taking those steps.
Since having your daughter in those 6 months since she's been alive and been a bit of an inconvenience at times for you, just talk us through what you've learned since then and how that journey has been.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely so much to that, that could be said about what I've learned since she's been born, but the major themes in my life have really been just so much gratitude and a major increase in empathy. I feel like I wasn't always like a super empathetic I mean, I'm still not like a super empathetic person, um but God has taught me so much empathy, practical application of it, not just other moms, but also I mean just in general, and then so much gratitude and the things that were coming to mind. Especially in that immediate postpartum, which like obviously a lot of people, recognize is just like how dependent you become on other people and the saying of it takes a village, to raise a child. Like truly, it's where the rubber meets the road, and it's where people either show up or don't. And it's also where you either ask for help or you don't. And like we need to humble ourselves and recognize that we have people who want to bless us, and we need to be willing to accept that blessing. And so learning that like the body of Christ, like the phrases of like our family of believers aren't just phrases, right? So and I have it written down, but 1 Corinthians 12:12, it's talking about just as a body is one and has many members, and all of the members of the body, though many, are one body. So it is with Christ. And so that, and as well as in Ephesians 2, where it talks about us bearing with one another in love. Like Christ has given us a family, and especially being in the military and the nature of being far away from home and from blood relatives and people who it's a little bit easier to inconvenience. Um, it God just did an amazing work in my life immediately after Caroline was born, to where the family that we had rooted ourselves in down here in Louisiana just came out of the woodwork. It's not like we didn't see them and rely on them all the time, but I mean, I felt like they literally saved my life, because I had to go to the ER twice after Caroline was born as well um for something that should not have happened. But I had to go to the ER for myself, and literally like the friends that we have here were like mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers to us, that like they literally came over to our house and took care of our newborn who was like 5 or 6 days old, while like my husband took me to the ER. And then they came and didn't say like, can we hold the baby? They were like, all right, you get the vacuum, you get the mop, we're gonna get the dishes in the sink, what do you want to eat? And it was just like so amazing to be able to ask for that and to actually receive that, and to see just how generous you know, uh, the members of the body of Christ really are. And so that I think that definitely grew my maturity and my understanding of what unity in the body really is, to like rejoice together and to suffer together and to uphold one another.
Going back to work, how has that been for you? And have you had to rely on like your community a lot through that transition as well?
Yeah, 1000%. I mean, I know I've talked to Erin about it a little bit too. And it was definitely, again, since all of the heart changed, it's like, no, I just don't want to go back to work, because I just want to spend all day with her. But um, that was another area that God was super generous to us. And we were, of course, like not over stressing, but reasonably stressing about like childcare and just the reality that I don't want somebody else to be raising my child, but I don't have a choice. And so with that, we still didn't want to rely on just like friends and hopping around and having like an unreliable schedule. So he provided us with like a nanny who just, I mean, treats her like she's like basically an aunt, at this point. I mean, she came over to our house on her birthday and gave us clothes for our daughter. Like she just bought her onesies and was like, these are super cute. And it was her birthday. Like they were going out to eat dinner like immediately after. So things like that have made going back to work all the more easy. even though it doesn't feel easy, and like obviously naturally it doesn't, and it wouldn't, because we're just not designed to like want to up and leave them. I never felt like I had enough time with her, even though we have a very generous amount of time. But um yeah, I think knowing that what God taught has been teaching me and has taught me so far since we've been established now and both of us being back at work is that, like, even though I'm not able to be at home when I want to be at home with her, like, God is still with her. And like, he's using that to remind me that God's not just with me all the time. He's not just with Aaron, and not just with Liz, and not just, with whoever all the time. He's with Caroline all the time. And that just brings me a lot more peace to know that um it's not just a nanny who's watching over her, like God is watching over her. And I think that's going to be an important thing for us, especially as we like advance in motherhood, like all of us, to realize, like, as our kids, leave the nest and things like that, like, you can't hold on to them forever. And so, but yeah, ultimately, like, our kids are God's kids, really, too. And like, I think that has been a very comforting thought.
That's something I've had to like learn through pregnancy even too, because I'm like, it's gonna be the same when I have this baby outside of them. I'm gonna be worried about everything, and because I talked about it in a couple podcast episodes. We had like something on our anatomy scan, so it was just like a lot going on. But I just really learned like God is in control of our children, and that's not just during pregnancy; it's literally all the time. But you said one thing that I wanted to go back to. You were talking about how you don't want to go back to work because you feel as if it's not what you were designed to do. Is that a realization you had before pregnancy, or is that something that happened through pregnancy and becoming a mom?
Yeah, I think that definitely happened a lot more through pregnancy. Like we were talking about, just gaining all of the knowledge, and suddenly it's funny, like I feel like I didn't really start learning anything until like 32 weeks, which at that point, I mean, I was like, wow, I should have known this a long time ago. But um yeah, it, it was just something that I thought so much more about, and it made me realize that, like, being pregnant made me take a hard look at how I was handling my own health, and it made me, like, question and consider a lot of how I want, like, what do I want my kids' childhood what do I want my children's childhood to look like? And then how does that measure up to societal norms and to, like, cultural expectations, and what we as a society have convinced ourselves is best, if it's daycare, if it's public government funded schools, which I know, like, is always a hot topic and stuff in these conversations. But definitely in pregnancy, making me take a harder look at those things was when I started to realize, like, I went from thinking like, I'll just go with the flow, I'll just do whatever, whether it's whatever my parents did or whatever's the norm, into actually thinking, like, and asking those questions of, is that is that what's best? And it's not in a judgmental way. Like, obviously, people make the best decisions as you can, what suits individual families and circumstances. Like, there's no judgment in doing, like we talked about, one or the other. But when given the choice, I realized, like, I don't want somebody else raising my kids if I have the option to not have that be the case. Like, and there's a lot of, discourse over what's being taught in schools. And so when you consider the kind of control that parents naturally are inclined, especially moms are naturally inclined to want to control what is in the classroom, what teachers are teaching, and spending time, pouring into their kids. I think the natural, like, follow-on question is, well, why don't you do it? And so that was definitely a realization that I had of, like, the choices that I make aren't just my own anymore. Like, now they're actually affecting, like, a tiny person, like a child, a precious child of God. And um yeah, and so yeah, I think that's pretty much where I realized it, is like wanting to be with her. It just wasn't, it was so 100%, it's not natural for us to, like, just be like, well, here you go, just somebody else take my child.
Did your mom stay home with you, or was this like a new concept to you as you became a mom, or was it something you were like familiar with?
It was definitely, I feel like I saw a little bit of both growing up, because I think I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what it is, but I just don't have very good memory of, like, pre-age 12 for me. That's probably not great. I don't know why, but pre-age 12, I don't have, like, very strong memories, except for little snippets here and there. But I know that my mom stayed home, one, because I was a twin, and so double trouble was just like way too much for both of my parents to be working. But then probably like middle school age, when like we were, you can go to the bathroom yourself and, like feed yourself and take care of the things you need to take care of in the house. She did have different jobs. So she was like a bank teller, I guess. Yeah, she was a bank teller, and she worked at the post office, and she was a receptionist at like our medical center and stuff like that. So she cycled through a couple different jobs. Um, but the realization of wanting myself to stay at home was not something that I had ever even compared like what I grew up with, because we were just busy and in the school system, but I think in the best of ways. I mean, I don't know about what y'all's take on public school versus homeschooling is, because I have that, like, I've had that half and half of like, well, I went to public school and I turned out fine. It's like, I don't know if you guys have had that, like, I went to public school or I went to private school or I was homeschooled, but it's funny how I'm like, well, I had a great time in high school.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it kind of depends. I don't know. Matt was homeschooled and I was not. So we both have like different perspectives, and he had a good experience. But I think it depends on like the kid and where you live. Like there's a lot of different factors that like go into it, and like whatever is best for your family. But yeah, it just depends. Like I'm like, I liked my school growing up, but I know Matt had a really good experience too. So I think it's all subjective to your family and the kids and I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into it, and I'm still working through it. We got time. It's fine.
Yeah.
I think the place where I've landed when it comes to that is it's less about if the public school would do a good enough job. Like, yeah, I look back at my childhood, I'm like, it was great. It was nostalgic. Like I think back and I'm like, I want my kids to have that experience. But I also know that if I can give my child 13 years of Bible-based education versus public school, like even in the best public school, you're not going to get Bible-based education. And so if I can give them that gift, if I either financially can put them in a private school or can afford to do it myself from home, like that is kind of the place I've landed when it comes to that. Like I didn't have that many years of Bible-based education, and I wish I did. And sure, I'm fine now. Sure, we're all fine now. But what could it have looked like if we had it earlier on?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at with that. One thing that my dad always says, Kendall, is that having kids teaches you how to be an adult. And I think that that's definitely true when it comes to all of the little decisions that you realize you're spending so much time researching when it comes to kids. Like, never in my life did I think that I would research the different types of whole milk until my son turned 1. Like, never did I think that I would care about the type of diapers that he wears. Like, all these things. Like, I don't know that I would have said I was a critical thinker before having kids, but until having kids and the decisions you make impact other people, I don't really think I grasped some of the decisions that I was making. And it's just crazy how much more invested you are in learning when you have children to take care of. So I lost my train of thought because pregnancy
Yeah.
and mom life. Oh, and another thing I was going to say too, when it comes to you realizing that God is always with Caroline, kind of jumping back to that, it was a good reminder just hearing you say it for me too, because throughout Weston's 1.5 years of life, I've had to continue to remind myself that, because leaving him, it sometimes is easier than others. Like when he's in a good mood and when he's happy, it's like not as hard to leave him and of course I'm leaving him with his grandma. So like it's not that deep, but on days that I walk out the door and he's crying mama, like then it gets really tough. Like I think about when I have to go back to work after having this baby, and I think that in a sense it's going to be harder to leave Weston than it is the baby, because the baby doesn't know any different. Like Weston actually by that point will be able to say full sentences and communicate what he's feeling, and like I don't want to hear what he's feeling because that's just going to make me sad.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's I think it's God's grace that we never get comfortable in motherhood, like that things are always changing because we always have to keep revisiting the same lessons, which just circle back to the same truth that doesn't get old, that's active and living and working inside of us. So just a cool thought. Like, sorry, it doesn't get easier, guys. Just sitting here at 1.5 years of motherhood as a veteran that I am telling you. But I think that's a gift that it doesn't get easier. And I think it's amazing, as hard as it is sometimes. I think it's amazing that we are as young as we are, because sometimes I think about like when we're 30, like that's 5 years from now for Liz and I. Like, I guess you too, Kendall, when we're 30,
Oh,
like, like we're gonna know so much more than we know now. Like we've already, sometimes I
well,
feel like,
30's
oh
not
yeah,
even old. 30's not even old.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like we just have so
Mhm.
much to learn. And I sometimes get frustrated with myself that like I haven't arrived yet, but I'm like, well, the point is not arriving. The point is our increased dependency upon the Lord. Like the more we know, the more we realize that we fall short every single time. And that's just such a gift.
Yeah, we won't arrive till we get to heaven. We have to run the race with endurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a really interesting thing that you pointed out too, of just how motherhood is like a repeated, like you learn, like you keep relearning the lessons, which is easy to say in other areas of life where you're like, oh God, I'm not getting this, and God just has to keep, teaching me patience, or has to keep teaching me this, discipline. But then motherhood is literally like you every single child you're going through, like they're not the same, they're still all unique in that sense, and yet still like you're going through the baby stage and toddlers, like newborn, infant, baby, toddler, like child, and all of that other stuff. So you're going through that multiple times, and yet it's still different every time, because now you have one kid and a baby, now you have a toddler, a kid, and a baby, and now you have a toddler, kid, and a teen, and a baby, and it's like it is different every time. And that's
Hmm.
a really interesting point of like relearning it in a new context.
Yeah. 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 I can't wait. We just have more to learn.
It's
Well,
funny too, because I think of like I've heard people say, and it's part of what makes me more comfortable with like wanting more kids, because again, I went from like I don't really want to do this pregnancy thing to now I'm like, I don't know, like maybe maybe I'll be eating my words, but bring it on, Lord. However many
yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
If you want me to have 10 kids, I'm gonna listen to the podcast lady, and she's just laying it all out. So
Yeah.
it's like, I could do this, like as many times as the Lord wants to allow. And it's just funny to think of going from like, once you pass like one kid, everything's new. And then once you pass the second kid, now you've like, as they say, it's like man on man, right? Like mom and dad going one kid on one kid. And once you reach three, what is 3 to 7? Like at that point you're already outmanned. So like you're playing zone. So
Yep.
what really is the difference between 3 and 7 or 10? And so um yeah, it is just funny to think about how the Lord uses kids to make us adults and to mature us.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Children are definitely a blessing in like so many ways. I think every day of Weston's life, I learned how that's applicable more and more.
Yeah.
So, Kendall, what is one thing that you would say? Because this is another thing that Liz and I always are having conversations about and trying to nail down. And I don't think that we're ever going to actually nail it down. But what would your advice be to 16-year-old Kendall, to Kendall who's a junior in high school, trying to think about the rest of her life, and every decision seems so deep, and everyone's asking me what you're going to do after high school and all these things. Like, what is your advice to her? How would you put into words what you've learned through motherhood and how it's changed you? And what would you say? Like, what decisions can they can 16-year-old girls make today that will help them mind their mission when it comes to womanhood, to motherhood?
Yeah, that's a deep question.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
I definitely think if I were able to talk to myself, knowing where I stood, right? Like just a few years ago and on to being like a late teenager and trying to figure out how to even just start my adult life. I think I would just bring up the fact, like I had mentioned earlier, but bring up the fact that being a mom is an option. Like being a mom is a job. And I feel like in our modern culture, people want to recognize how hard being a mom is, but also not necessarily always validate the fact that like it is work and it is a job and it's a valid choice. It's a absolutely, and it's a fulfilling choice too. It's not something where There are days where you wonder if like what you're doing has an impact on like in real life. Even though I'm sure there's days where it may feel like that, but legitimately like having the responsibility and being entrusted by God um for children is just such a monumental weight that brings so much satisfaction and brings so much joy. And I think that um it's easy to think that we're not ready for kids or never ready for kids. And I think that I just hear a lot of people say, I'm just not ready for it. But we're so open to using that application of, God equipped, he doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Mm-hmm.
And so he gives us exactly what we need in every season of life. And that includes the season where we have infants, toddlers, children, teens. He equips us with exactly what we need if we're just willing to trust that he's going to give us what we need for that season. Um, and then also I think I would tell myself too to just like talk to more moms, like on an actual real level, just talk to moms. Not just see them as like my friends' moms, or not just see them as somebody who's a little bit older than me at a different stage of life, or I'm a kid and they're older and we're just in completely different worlds, because we're all living in the same world. We're all just going through life in the same order pretty much. So I think I would tell myself and any other girl who's not really sure about the whole motherhood thing to just like talk to some moms that are actually like happy as moms, not just hear what media or the internet tries to push as what this whole crazy hectic motherhood thing is, but just talk to real people and like find out the truth, find out the knowledge, the wisdom
Mm-hmm.
that actually helps you to understand why it's important. um yeah, I think I'd say that. And then also there's a couple like other quotes that come to mind, and it's just, Colossians 3:17, but it's whatever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. And so just in whatever we do, whether it's actual work at a career or work in the household and work with your children, it's still so important. And I think that's what it's about. Just whatever work that God lays before you to take joy
Mm-hmm.
in.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, Kendall, for joining us. Liz, do you have any more final thoughts or questions for Kendall?
I didn't know if you wanted to ask the mind your mission question, but no.
I kind of
I'm
tied
having
it
tummy
in.
issues right now, so I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm
I kind of
making it.
tied it in. I'll just figure we go with it.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to close, or do you want me to, because you're having tummy issues?
No, I can close. So wait, I'm not asking. Am I tying the question in, or we're not? We already kind of talked about it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be fine. No, I thought I was gonna have to run away and go to the bathroom, but it's like coming and going, so I'm fine.
Go for it.
Anyways, I know. Anyways, what was I gonna say? Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story, Kendall. It's been so good to hear as someone who's like a little bit behind you in your journey. So thank you so much for sharing. We were so glad to have you on the Mighty Mission podcast. I guess what else do I say? Maybe Aaron closes.
This happens every time.
I hate closing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
Yeah, thanks, Kendall, and thanks for everyone for listening. We hope that you have a wonderful week. And with that, this has been Erin, Liz, and Kendall helping you mind your mission.